thousands of new shows coming online all the time, and as these guys can attest, it is a lot of hard work to make a podcast. And so understanding what your goals are, if a podcast is the best fit for those goals, they're all important questions to ask. So we have a great group of folks here to talk about that from an individual perspective and from an organizational perspective as well. So I think we can jump right in. Hey guys, if you wouldn't mind introducing yourselves and talking a little bit about what your show is and why you decided to start it.
Okay, my name is Sean Douglas, host of Life Transformation Radio, and I started it because I knew that podcasting was where people's attention were going, and I also knew that if you wanted to reach your target audience, they would come to your show since that's where the medium was going anyways. So knowing people's behaviors and knowing how we consume content was just where it was going, and I wanted to be part of that. And so when I started my show, it was talking about the transformational moments that people go through, which wasn't being talked about.
My name is Andrew Kaufman. I work for the George W. Bush Presidential Center in Dallas, so I'm here representing an organizational standpoint. I am the host of our podcast called The Strategist, yes, based off of strategery in the 90s, or the 2000 election SNL sketch. We try to be a little lighthearted and provide a different voice in a crowded space right now. And so my day job is really I oversee all of our digital strategy, which includes podcasting. So I ended up as the host, but mostly because we think it is a key aspect in a holistic digital strategy. We can go into more detail on that.
Yeah. You guys really thought it out. I did not think my podcast out. No. So in 2016, I was like, I'm going to start a business. So I bought a booth at an expo 8 months in advance. I was like, I'm going to have something by this date. I talked to a lawyer. It turns out on a work visa, you can't make money outside of your day job until you get a green card. So it's illegal for me to have a company. So I decided the only thing I can do is content. And I had heard about podcasting. I listened to Tim Ferriss's first episode in which he was drunk. It was shitty, and I was like, I could do this. Oh yeah. And so I did. My goal was to connect with people in the startup ecosystem in Austin, the business ecosystem in Austin, to get access to eventual investors, partners, and ask questions that I can Google and watch videos on YouTube, but I can also ask people who are good at that in startups.
Yeah.
So, mistakes.
Right?
Yeah.
And I guess I'll say for us, for better or worse, the 2016 election ignited a lot of conversations about democracy. What does it mean to live in a democracy? What are the different aspects of democracy, voting and the free press and things like that? So there were a lot of folks writing books about those topics. I was just at Book People yesterday, and there's like a whole wall of democracy books that are there. But no one that we found was really having those conversations in the podcast world. That was our impetus. The McCourty Institute for Democracy is a research center based on topics about democracy, so it was a good fit for us in that regard as well. So did any of you guys consider other types of media to get your message out there before you ultimately decided on the podcast?
Were we doing it before?
So did you think, when you were kind of deciding whether to start your show, did you consider, oh, maybe this would be better as a video, or maybe there's a better, different way to get this content out there?
Definitely video, YouTube and all that. I was already doing Medium and Quora and all of the written ones, but you have to be creating content on audio, video, and written against all platforms at least 4 times a day. Just add podcasts. I mean, I make 10,000 pieces of content every year, at least, at a minimum.
And you still do like coaching and counseling and all that
I do
stuff
coaching,
too,
counseling.
right?
I speak 20 to 25 times a year, and I'm active duty military all at the same time.
Do you ever sleep?
Yeah.
6 hours a day.
Wow. So,
Scheduled 6 hours a day.
yeah, you should start a life hacking podcast, like on the side. I mean, clearly,
I am going to start another show.
Yeah.
Further proof our military is where it's at.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
So you're starting another show. So what is your process there? What are you doing to figure out what's the market for it? Who are your listeners going to be? Those kind of things.
So I looked at the top ranked categories, which are true crime, drama, and comedy. And I looked at how can I play into those categories. So inside of the comedy category, I'm going to make a show called Awkward Dinner Conversations.
Ooh.
And it's going to be like, hey, what's up? We're going to come out to our parents today. Right? Kind of awkward. Hey, I'm going to go do a 3-year stint in the Marine Corps to a family who hates the military. I got arrested yesterday, and by the way, I'm a drug addict. Like, These are dinner conversations that people have. Or Thanksgiving, like, man, Trump, you know, like, awkward dinner conversation, right? So we're just gonna highlight the awkward dinner conversations that people have every single day. And if I do have guests, they're gonna be like, tell me about an awkward dinner conversation. Like, oh, I told my parents that I'm 35 and my wife is 18. You know, like, you know, like, and it's gonna be kind of awkward. So, or it's like, I got fired from my job for pornography. Like, these are dinner conversations that people have. We're gonna highlight the dinner conversation.
Wow.
And so there's no one else you found doing this content in that way?
No.
Cool.
There's one show called Dinner Conversations, and they literally eat dinner while having a conversation about nothing.
Yeah, yeah. So Andrew, you know, the Bush Center has lots of different media already. You guys are already doing tons of different things. What was it about podcasting that made you think this is really something we should get on?
Well, there were a couple of aspects there. One, we were sitting around talking, and so many interesting people come through the center that aren't a part of a public event. Some of them are a part of a public event. We had Gary Sinise on recently, who was in Forrest Gump, Lieutenant Dan. He was in Apollo 13, and we had a public event around him, and we did a session getting to know him a little bit. But there were a lot of people that came through that didn't necessarily have as big an audience, like a lady named Nilufar Rahmani, who was the first fighter pilot in Afghanistan after the country was liberated from the Taliban. And getting her perspective, and that's something that President Bush really wanted to speak to and hear her story. But why don't we share this story with everybody? And so we realized that we had something there that was unique, and then we combined that with the fact that we have a lot of followers on Facebook, but as you know, we have unless you put money behind it, we'll reach 4 of those people on Facebook. And anytime that there is a medium that when you put your content out and someone has subscribed to it, they will receive it. So if you have a podcast and you get someone to subscribe to it by producing good content, they will actually get a notification on their phone that delivers that content. Whereas Facebook, that is not the case on Facebook. On Twitter, that sort of is the case if you happen to look at your timeline at the right time. Instagram is similar to Twitter. It may or may not get seen by them. And so we saw that there was a real organizational value in content that would get to you. And so that makes it a key part of our digital strategy because of that.
Yeah. And so Moby, I know you work a lot in the space of personal branding, helping people build their brands and what have you. What role do you think a podcast can play in helping someone build their personal brand?
I think it's honestly leverage, which is if you have a show, a podcast or a video show, you can use that to connect with people, to have conversations, and just the chances of me being like, hey, I could ask you, hey, do you want to grab coffee, or do you want to come to my show? The chances of me connecting with people and actually starting a relationship is much higher if you have a show, and that's going to really build your brand. And like over time, that really develops into something. So you pick a target market, let's say it's about clown shoes or startups in Austin, which is not a great niche anymore, but still. You grow your brand.
Clown shoes, though, I think someone needs to get on that.
I agree. Yeah. So that's your next idea. You can leverage that to get so many people. Like we have the mayor through this podcast, and I think that really helps. But you got to keep doing it, and you won't see results in the first 6 months.
Can I expand on that?
Yeah.
So I literally did a podcast episode talking about the same thing.
Clown shoes.
No. about niching your show
Yeah.
in a way that's relevant.
Mm-hmm.
Like right now, if you look on iTunes, there's nobody, and I mean nobody, reviewing comics when the Avengers movies are coming out. Nobody. Because I've checked. I'm like, damn, I need to start a show. Because Avengers, everybody was talking about Avengers. Everybody's talking about, Captain Marvel. Everybody's talking about Wonder Woman. Like, why is somebody not podcasting? Like, if you have episode 279 in comic year this year, is worth it, and they're like reviewing the comics, because not only do people like Avengers, but if you're a real fan of Avengers and comics and stuff, like you have these.
Right.
So why are you not capitalizing on the trends that are happening right now?
Right. Well, I mean, that shouldn't be your only motivation, though, right? Like, there has to be some passion in there.
100%. Yeah. I don't do anything with I don't like comics, so I would never do it.
Yeah.
But someone who is nerding out on the Avengers needs to start stuff like if you want to start a podcast and you don't know what to do, number one, have a passion. Number two, capitalize on the trends.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Have you guys had any failed podcast ideas or like things that you thought would be really great but didn't end up working out?
Oh yeah, like all of us.
Yeah, I'm sure. Well, one of our things is that every podcast takes so many resources, and so we really are careful about what we want to do and whether do we want to do it as a mini series and try it. Do we want to make it a commit to a long-term thing early on? And as an organization, we have limited resources, both time and money, and we have to make sure that we are picking and choosing the things that really forward our mission. And so our mission is taking action to help groups that need it, advancing policy in both locally and in DC, and developing leaders. We're big into leadership, and so if what we are doing doesn't further the mission that supports those three things, we say, okay, this probably is a great idea, but not a great idea for us.
Right, and that's a different conversation for you guys as an organization versus if you were going to start a podcast on
Right,
your own.
exactly.
Those goals are different. Yeah.
Be aware of your show, like your episode. Like, I did an episode about addiction, and I thought I would do the forms of addiction. That was bad. My show's a live online radio show where people call into the show. So, live on the air, I'm talking to an addiction expert, which is what I should have done, which is, let's call it addiction. I said, let's talk about the forms of addiction. The guy calls in, he's like, man, I got an addiction. And I was like, all right, let's talk about it. He's like, can't keep my hands off my wiener. And then right live on the show. And I was like, okay then. And his phone call, you know, and she's like, well, technically it's a form of addiction. And then I thought, I was like, got it.
Yeah.
So I should have just been like, let's talk about addiction, not like the specific forms. So yeah, and then it became my highest rated episode for like 2 months.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
2 months.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
That
Like,
was me. That was me calling.
Yeah, but it was so bad. I was like, it's gonna hurt.
Yeah. So thinking about what Jessica was talking about downstairs a little bit, like I think people tend to get focused in the downloads and the monetization. But so what do you think that balance should be between starting a podcast and making sure that it gets out to people versus doing it for your own goals, whether they're personal or organizational?
Number one, solid marketing strategy. Don't guess. Solid marketing strategy. And number two, produce amazing content that not only you want to listen to, but you know that people want to listen to. And you know this by asking people and reading what people are asking for on social media.
If you build it, they won't necessarily come.
100%.
Yeah.
100%.
Go ahead. Well,
That was my
Brilliant.
That was it.
I'm being sneaky and nobody's noticing me.
No, we
Alright,
can all
alright.
see you. She's right there. So what was it about?
About how do you strike the balance between downloads and monetization while still achieving your own goals that you have
Yeah.
for the show, and how much should downloads and monetization play into your decision to start a podcast?
I think you're 100% right about it. Having a market strategy, I think you should have it and then outsource it to a VA from the Philippines, onlinejobs.ph, honestly. Because I think it gets boring after a while, right? The downloads, the monetization, the promotion. You're like, oh, I gotta post this, I gotta make a web post, I gotta put it on YouTube, I gotta do this. It gets annoying after a while. The balance is, I think you should take the first 3 to 6 months, learning everything and doing everything, editing, video, live streaming yourself, all of it, and then outsourcing. And then just focusing on the creative, the thing that makes you happy. Like Gary yesterday, he loved making videos, editing videos. Do that. Just outsource the rest. I mean, you might not, it's not a money pit, but you will, put in a lot of money. Honestly, outsource the stuff that you don't like. And if you love marketing strategy, do that every single time. If you don't, think about it and outsource it. And just focus on making 5 episodes a week instead of 1 episode a week. If you love podcasting more than marketing. So I think it's a balance. And I don't know, it goes for me up and down. Sometimes like, I'm gonna be super aggressive in some months.
Yeah.
But it happens the same way if you're a guest or if you have a podcast. Like, what I think is frustrating is that people don't promote the show as best as we do.
Yeah.
Like, we're hitting email lists, we're hitting social, we're hitting this, hitting this. And then I purposely tag my guests in the post because typically they just don't, oh, I was on a show. Like one post on Instagram. Like,
Yeah.
I post it many times. And then 30 days later, I post a different form of content about the show that happened 30 days ago. So if you're a guest on a podcast, you need to be having a solid marketing strategy and producing great content. It's not all about you, it's always about the audience. But solid content, marketing strategy. Whether you're a guest or you're a host, it doesn't matter. The same rules apply.
Well, I think a big part of it too is having some goals and setting some goals and working toward them. They should be realistic. It shouldn't, don't do like we'll have 100,000 listeners within 6 months or whatever it is. But find that goal, and then when you if you make it, great, you made it. If you don't make it, reevaluate a little bit. It's like, okay, what do we need to do differently to get to our goal, or are we so far off, we've sunk X dollars and hours and resources into this, we're not making any progress. Maybe we don't have the compelling content that we thought we did, that there isn't a market for this.
Yeah. So where are you guys in your podcast journey? Are you all just thinking about starting shows? Has anyone launched one yet? Yeah. What show do you guys do?
So I make fiction podcasts. I'll be talking later on with a couple of fiction podcasts here downstairs with Sarah. Yeah, so y'all make nonfiction, and so it's a little different. But yeah, so I have this is my 4th show.
Yeah.
It's prolific.
Since 2018.
So what's your process like? How did you decide to bring each of those shows online? And I'd be curious to hear too how the process differs, fiction versus nonfiction.
Well, for fiction, like 2 minutes of content is 8 hours, right? And that's if I have the lines and the audio, and I have to cut them together, and I have to add sound effects and sound design and all these other things. So it takes a lot longer to produce the content generally, but the process is still pretty much the same. I'm very curious about like the whole, I very much focus on Twitter, Instagram, because I'm by myself and I'm writing these stories and it takes so long. Like you were saying, putting it on 20 different mediums, hitting all your marketing strategies, that's the stuff that's difficult for me because, I'm writer, director, producer, actor, promoter,
Everything.
all
Yeah.
things.
Yeah.
So.
So Dana, thank you for joining us. You mind introducing us and telling us who you are, what you do?
Yeah, I'm Dana Gerber-Margie. I'm the co-founder of the Bella Collective, which is a publication about podcasts. And I'm also co-lead on a project called Preserve This Podcast. So I'm an AV archivist by training, and we're out there trying to help indie podcasters preserve their stuff. So we actually have a session this afternoon.
Yeah.
So you should come to that.
Yeah.
We have zines.
Zines.
Yeah.
Free
They're
zines.
single-handedly bringing that term back.
Yeah.
So Dana, you work with a lot of podcasters throughout your various roles you just described. What are some of the reasons you see for people getting into podcasting? What are good versus maybe some that are more misguided?
Yeah, before you, do
Yeah.
you mind if I go down and I've got to warm up the mayor?
Yeah.
You see
Warm him up.
I will see y'all in 5 minutes.
Okay.
Okay.
Stretch him up good, man.
Warm up the mayor, sure.
Warm up the mayor.
Some calisthenics in there.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I have to apologize too for being late. We found a bakery on the way here.
Oh, that's a really good.
And
Only open on Saturday.
only open on Saturday mornings, and we're like, oh yeah, we have time before. Yeah, this looks great. So I was eating a brioche. It was really good.
Totally understandable.
I'm sorry. So reasons to get into podcasting? I mean, I think the core reason is you want your voice heard. You have something to share with the world, and you have something creative that you just want to put out there. I do not think the reason that you should podcast is to monetize or to just get growth for growth's sake. I think you should just do it because you want to be heard. Misguided, I would say, is I'll start a podcast and everyone will know about me. I'll be famous. I'll get tons of money. Those are probably not going to happen. I think it's something that you have to truly enjoy with all your being.
Yeah.
And you can do the same thing if you're a guest. You don't even have to have a show. Your goal should be a guest on 50 shows a year. There's thousands and thousands and thousands of shows. You go to podcastguest.com, you go to Interview Valet with Tom Schwab. You go to iTunes, look at the top 200 shows. That's a cool one, that's a cool one. Listen to a couple episodes. I can get down with that. Subscribe to a couple, and then go and be on the show. Go to events like this and network with the podcasters. Oh, what is your show about? I like that. Do you have guests? And then when you have a show, if you have a show, then you can leverage your show against that show. Hey, you want to be a guest on my show? I can be a guest on your show. Let's cross promote. I do that all the time. For a month straight, I cross promoted 4 shows. Every week it was a different show, and I do a show Tuesday through Friday. So it was, hey, you're listening to Life Transformation Radio by my friend Sean Douglas. Make sure you subscribe to both of our shows, this show and this show, and be well in all that you do, you know? And so we literally, on each other's shows, cross-promoted for like a month.
Yeah.
And downloads and subscribers and like, you know, but you're helping everybody at the same time.
Yeah, so Andrew, you and I actually did that. I was telling you when we first started planning the session that I put an ad for our show at the beginning of the Strategics episode, and we saw a big spike in our listeners from Texas after that. So
That's awesome.
So what other questions do you guys have? In maybe 2 or 3 more minutes.
Because a lot of people are talking about monetization, which is obviously a buzzword, but besides money, it's time. Not everyone that expects to make money, there's going to be a time commitment, and even especially if you haven't done anything like this before and you don't know what's the requirement, you have to first figure out what that is, and then you have to manage your whole life. And we just had our opening speaker that says, yeah, I have all these great life commitments, but I do the show.
Yeah.
I'll work everything else.
Show first, kids second. Yeah. And how do you guys balance the podcast life and non-podcast life?
I love this question. I literally spend, so I do a show Tuesday through Friday. So the show is about 45 minutes to an hour, and then marketing is about another hour, so 2 hours every day. That's it. I don't edit anything. My show is hosted on Blog Talk Radio, so it's a live online radio show where I can take in callers, and so the show is live. There's no editing. No need for a VA, no need to spend time on that. All I do is take and download the audio, cut it up into different clips, put it into a Headliner app, upload the Headliner app, make a post on social medias, I'm done. And I do that, that's it.
I mean, there is some learning curve involved to some of that too, right?
Sure.
You have to come up to speed.
Yeah, but don't be afraid to make mistakes. Like, that's why if you want to edit a show, you can just edit all the mistakes out, right? But I was like, I don't want to spend the time, because I know people who are spending thousands of dollars editing and all the process of like all the production. I was like, I don't want to do that. I just want to have an authentic, transparent feel.
Yeah. So Dana, on the most recent episode, I think it's the most recent of the Preserve This podcast, you talked with somebody who deliberately decided to stop doing her show.
That was me.
Oh,
I
was it?
stopped
Oh,
doing it.
okay. Yeah. So what was that decision process like?
Well, that was actually just time, like prioritizing what actually I wanted to do. So I had a podcast in 2013, and I put it on hiatus, and then I realized about a year after the hiatus, I don't want to do this anymore. I don't like this. I'm not a podcast producer. I don't want to do this. Other people can do this a lot better than I can, and I went into other fields, like other avenues.
Yeah. So
there
is more than just podcasting. Yeah.
Yeah, and the Preserve This podcast, I should say, that is edited by a wonderful colleague, Molly Shorts, and it's also assisted edited by Sarah Nguyen, who is in the back here. So I was the archivist, the expert on the podcast. I was interviewed for it. She edited me down. I love editing.
Moby just said they're starting back.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
All right. Well, thank you all very much. We'll all be around if you have questions throughout the day. Sorry to catch up with somebody there.
Yeah.
Thanks, Al.
I think it stopped.
Well, sometimes it stops within 20 minutes.
It was going.
Thanks for watching, everybody.